Can hear now. Awesome. Okay. Thank you guys. Thanks for bearing with me on that. All right. So, what I wanted to do is I wanted to spend some time this evening just going through the new save to buy scheme for first time buyers. And I'll just give an explanation and a bit of a breakdown of what this is all about, how it essentially works to hopefully help first time buyers if they're trying to find an alternative to help to buy. Now, help to buy stopped being available really in December of last year because the deadlines for when you had to have obviously put in your offer and had your offer accepted and so on and so forth. So this is a replacement for help to buy. However, this isn't provided by the government. It's provided by developers and it's spearheaded by developers. As such, it is a good thing, but there are also some downsides. And I want to spend a little bit of time kind of talking about both because I think it is important. But as always, look, guys, if you do find this kind of this content interesting, if you're going to benefit from this, you may know someone else who actually may benefit from it as well. So please do me a favor and actually share the video. That will be really, really, really helpful to me as well. All right, so let's just get. Sorry, guys. Phone's going off like mad. Let's get straight into it. I'm just going to share this screen right here, just so you can see what I'm looking at. Okay, so Save to Buy has been launched to enable first-time buyers to move into the home that they plan to buy before they have completed on the purchase. So the idea behind this whole scheme, and I'll link this article down here so you can actually read it in your own time, is that essentially you must have 1% of your deposits or 1% equivalent of the property that you end up going for, 1% of its value available in order to kickstart this off. So the idea behind this is if you look at it in the context of your normal deposits, right? People were normally looking at 5%, 10%. And particularly in areas like London where you have ever increasing property prices. I mean, you could be looking at a one bedroom flat for like 30 grand. So you would need literally, well, I wish one bedroom flat for 30 grand, 300,000, right? So a 10% deposit for that would be 30,000 pounds. In this instance, you're only going to need 1%. So literally, what? 3 grand is what you're going to need as a deposit to get started on this scheme. Now, what happens when you move into this property, and there will be some checks, and I'll come to that a little bit later on, a fixed monthly cost based on your own finances and the average local rents will be basically taken as your deposit towards this property. So let's just say, for example, you're going for a one bedroom flat. It's going to cost you £300,000. You're going to need 3K up front to get you started on this scheme. But all of your rent payments will go towards building your deposit. Now, this can last up to, it says here, buyers typically have between 6 to 12 months to save their deposit, but the scheme can run up to 2 years if they need longer. So this is probably the first, I guess, thing that may be a little bit difficult for people. So let's just say £300,000, right? Let's say your rent comes out at £1,000 a month. So over the course of, say, 2 years, right, you would have made what, £24,000 in rent payments. That would be £24,000 deposit towards that flat. And that means that once you've got that deposit, what you then do is you apply for a mortgage, and then the property is basically yours. You start to pay it down like you normally would a mortgage. Now, I think for me, the 6 to 12 months period may be a little bit of a limiting factor for some first-time buyers. This is heavily going to depend on your income and how much you can actually afford. And there are some anomalies, which we'll come to shortly, around maybe some of the cons around this that aren't necessarily going to be good news for this, but it's going to depend on how much you can afford. If you're in London already, you're probably already paying pretty high rents, right? I mean, I remember when I was living in London, and this is back in 2016 I left, 15, 16 I left. Now I was paying probably about 700 quid for a room in London. So if you're going for a one bedroom flat, depending on how much the rents come out at, many people would probably say a one-bedroom flat, if you could get it for about £1,000 a month, would probably be a bit of a bargain in the city. This isn't exclusive to the city, though. I think that's important to know. This is being spearheaded by developers across the country, but I would imagine this will be very, very popular in a city like London because of property prices, so on and so forth. But you've got between 6 and 12 months typically, but you can go up to 2 years. Now, it also says here that you can also top up your monthly payments to reach your goal sooner if you wanted to. So if you are going to use this, it's really, really important to be pragmatic and proactive from the outset, really. Understand, if it's going to be a property worth 300,000 you're looking to get, obviously you're renting it first. So you have to have the intention that it's going to be a place that you actually want to live in. So you need to then work out from a financial point of view, if it is going to cost you £1,000 a month, can you get sufficient deposits, right, together within the 6 to 12 month period? Can you do it within 2 years? I think most people probably go for 2 years, right? Can you do it within that period of time? And this is good in terms of the bonus thing, because if you are in London or you're in a job where you might get a bit of a bonus, you can top up to get you to that sooner. Now, it says here, when you're within 1 month of having saved the required deposit. So the deposit, I assume, is going to be pre-prescribed at the outset. So for this £300,000 property, you're going to need a deposit of XYZ, and that's how you're going to be able to work out whether you can achieve it within this maximum 24-month period or 2-year period. So you need to know that. But it says once you're within that 12-month period, you can then apply for a mortgage as you would normally do, to then obviously take ownership. It says here, once you've done that, the property is legally yours. Now, you have to be a first-time buyer to use this. There aren't any age restrictions that I can see or anything like that. The main criteria is you have to be a first-time buyer. But let's start talking about maybe some of the downsides, that I see. Look, this is being pushed by developers and developers only. This isn't backed by the government in any way, shape, or form. And I think that in a property market where we don't have enough properties for the amount of people who want to rent them, I think you have to be a little bit careful that you don't get caught into a situation where there's only a limited number of stock, because the developers can only build a limited number of properties in one go, right? They're going to have stock come onto the market in intervals via releases, right? That's what they normally do. And I think in a place like London, you potentially get yourself into a situation where you end up paying top whack for a property and maybe even overvalue for a property, because it can be quite fierce out there. And I think that's worthwhile knowing going in, especially if you are in London. It might be different in other parts of the country, but you're still going to have this supply versus demand issue. And like I said, because the criteria to start using this thing is a lot more, accessible to people, you don't need 10% or 5%, which is often thousands upon thousands. You only need £1,000 to 1% to start. I would imagine that this will pique a lot of people's interest. And so you just need to make sure that you're not going to get yourself into a bit of a bidding war where a property that should be going for 350,000 ends up going for like £500,000. And not being cynical, but I would imagine that that's going to work very, very well for the property developers, right? Because at the end of the day, they are going to want to sell it at the highest valuation that they basically can, at top asking price. And if there's a bidding war, that is more likely to happen. The other thing that is also worthwhile mentioning is, remember, we are entering into a period of uncertainty and recession, right? So they're talking about property markets falling. I can see this being a counterbalance to that entire equation because of the parameters in which this is going to work with, right? So even if you have the property market falling in under normal circumstances, remember with this, there's going to be like maybe 50 flats that are going to come up for sale. And how many people want to buy places in London? You don't need a 10% deposit, 1%. So 300,000. If you've got 3K lying around in a lifetime ISA or something like that, and we don't know whether you'll be able to use your lifetime ISAs for this just yet. I think we need a bit more information. I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be able to, but I just don't know whether you can or not. But if you've got your lifetime ISA, you might think, boom, I'm going to go for this. but you and a ton of other people are going to do that. So I can see this playing very, very well for the developers because it's a low entry barrier to entry. And so you're going to get a lot of interest. And that again is where you're going to end up with bidding wars where this property potentially ends up going for way over market valuation. I think ultimately it will be a very, very good thing for first time buyers as a whole. But I still think there's a lot of information that you need to kind of get your head around, and don't just run into this kind of blind and excited. You need to kind of really you need to ask good questions from the developers as and when they release these allotments of properties and they provide more information about this scheme, because the developers um, are doing this. You can bet your bottom dollar that they are doing it for profit. So, what is the cost to you? I think is the most important most important question to ask and to understand. But as a scheme, I think this is pretty good. I think it will help people. Um, there still aren't enough houses, mate. There still aren't enough houses being built. So it'll be very, very different if this was available with a multitude of houses on release available. At least you could then almost be certain that people will get a really good deal and won't pay over the odds for the homes. Um, but yeah, this is where we are right now. But I would encourage you, if you are a first time buyer or you're looking around at the moment, most of the developers are going to have this. So just ask about this scheme specifically. Don't forget, you still have the first home scheme, which is if you're a key worker. Um, Massive discounts on the property prices. So if you are a key worker, it might be worthwhile checking out that one before you check this one out. Because when you think about a low barrier to entry, 1% deposit to get started on here versus, discounts of 10, 20% on homes under that scheme, the monetary values they just don't even stack up in terms of which one is going to be the best for you. So just be vigilant, ask questions, but that's what we know about this right now. I will link this so you can actually see. Obviously, you've got shared ownership as well. Shared ownership is great. It does have its issues with staircasing sometimes. That although they have kind of relaxed the rules and how that actually works at the moment, but it's important to make sure that you're exploring all of the options. This is just another option that is available to you out there, and a lot of questions still to ask. But I'll link this article down in the descriptions once I've finished with this live. I appreciate you, but like I said, if you could share this with anyone that you think might find this useful, that would be amazing. Also, if you haven't subscribed, if you might be watching this on replay, you found this useful, consider subscribing to the channel. Really want to grow the channel. We are on the cusp of about 40,000 subs at this point in time. And I'll tell you what, it's been a hard slog getting to this number right here. So if I can get over that number, get tipped over 40K, that will be really, really great. But yeah, I appreciate you guys. I know that it's Friday evening and I've actually got to leave the house and go to a wedding because I'm a celebrant for my mate's wedding tomorrow. And I've still got to look at the speeches and the structure and all of that kind of stuff. It's very, very exciting. It's an honor that he's asked me. But I need to prepare. So, guys, have a good evening, and thank you again for bearing with me with the first one not having any audio. I will catch you probably maybe on Sunday for a Q&A. I'm not too sure just yet. There's a lot going on.